Before we start today's show, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. First episode of the month, first episode of 2024, and do my usual shout-outs. First of all, if you'd like to hear me on a very chaotic Game of the Year type episode, you can head over to Super Ghost Radio, where I took part in the 2023 Anti-Game of the Year event. It was chaotic, fueled by the Mad Elf that I was drinking, and we had a really good time. So again, that's Super Ghost Radio. Coming up this month on the bonus series for patrons called Tales from the Way Backlog is the old PC game Ski Free. If you remember that, the one where you're skiing down the hill and then the Yeti comes and eats you. We're going to do that for that bonus series. And as always, this episode is brought to you by the wonderful people who have chosen to support the show over at patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. They are Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast Crew, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Fakori, Jill, Kieran, Soccer, ZNA, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Rob Shack, Brian Skirsha, Randall, Jake Martin, Jenny E., and we've welcomed in a new patron, Low5 Alex. Alex, welcome to the VIP. If you'd like to support the show like these fine folks and many more, you can go to patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. And with all that being said, we're in a tight spot. This is really bad. Really, really bad. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is a video games review podcast where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog, play it, and discuss. My guest today is a friend of the show, one of the hosts of Fine Time podcast and the gamer assassin persona. Andre, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I know this sounds cliche, but I am really glad to be here.
This is going to be good. We've got a very special game to talk about today, and it's about time we collaborated on something after, chatting in Discord servers for a while now. Before we get into our game, I do want to point out to everybody that this, Andre, this is game number 100 covered on Tales from the Backlog. We've hit a bit of a milestone today.
Oh my god, I'm here for a special episode? I would have wore something nicer than this if I had known.
It's special because you're here. It's also special because it's game number 100, which is wild. It's not episode number 100. I've done a bunch of other discussion type episodes, but this is the 100th game, and that game is Killer7. We're in a tight spot today. Killer7 is the game.
It's dark, and we are in a tight spot. I feel great. See, like, Fine Time doesn't do episode. We don't really count stuff on there. So, like, I'm sure once we get to, like, we're going to overshoot 100. That's our joke. It's like, wait, was that? Oh, wait, this upload here is number 100. Too bad we didn't, I figure that's exactly what's going to happen to us. Good on you for remembering.
Of course, yeah. I keep track of at least the games that I do on here. So yeah, Killer7's the game today. It is an adventure game / first-person shooter developed by Grasshopper Manufacture and Capcom, published by Capcom for the GameCube and the PS2 in 2005. And for those who don't know, including me a couple months ago, Grasshopper Manufacture is the company headed by Goichi Suda, aka Suda51. So if this is your first time listening to the show, if you have not played Killer7, don't worry, we're not going to spoil anything story-wise for a while. You can check down in the show notes for a timestamp for when the spoilers begin. Up until then, we'll just kind of like talk broadly about the story. We'll talk about gameplay and stuff like that as well.
Is this to suggest you've never played another Grasshopper Manufacture game?
That is correct. Yeah.
Oh, you are really starting it. Because, like, people usually go for, like, No More Heroes or, like, what's the most popular, like, Lollipop Chainsaw or something like that. We're really, you're getting, like, the essence of Suda 51, like, right off the bat here. That's excellent.
Yeah, this is the first one. And if people are listening and don't know what Killer7 is, what like this concentrated Suda 51 game is all about, we have some elevator pitches for everybody. I say this is an on-rails FPS/adventure game that is unapologetically itself. There's nothing quite like this game. Andre, what's your elevator pitch for Killer7?
I would call it a politically charged graphic novel, I guess. Good luck figuring out what the politics are outside of like a couple things, but like it's at its heart, it's an adventure game where you use items and solve stuff, you know, like the old school idea of an adventure game, you know, but also like ridiculously violent, conceptually fucked up. It's really great. It's a really great game. Can I say that as my elevator pitch? It's great.
Yeah, it could be part of the maybe that should be part of more elevator pitches to just say actually, you know what, we're about to get off this elevator. It's a good game. You can say that.
It's really good.
I played this on PC. I did not play it on like the GameCube or anything like that. It took me 14 hours to play. I know you've probably played this game several times, so about how long does a playthrough take you? Do you know?
When I played it on Steam last year, I took about 20 hours. I like kind of really took my time. This recent playthrough took me more like 12. I didn't do nearly as much dinking around or whatever, mostly because I remembered what to do at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, back in the day, I'm sure it took me a similar amount of time. I originally did play this when it came out on GameCube on July 7th, 2005, 7/7, haha. And, yeah, it did take me, I kind of poked at it all summer because it was such a weird game. I wanted small doses. You know, it's kind of sometimes it can be a small doses game. It's like, okay, that was a lot. I need to.
Exactly. We can just go dive right into personal histories then. So you mentioned you did play it the day it came out on the GameCube. What was it that made you want to play this? What's the draw?
This was right up my alley. You know, like this was my aesthetic. I know that's like an overused term, but it really was, especially shit. How old was I at the time? 23-ish years old, still in my early 20s. This was the shit to me, especially whenever it was unveiled as part of the Capcom 5. That was the game I had my eye on the most. I was like, oh, this one looks excellent. And it was. I didn't really have any expectations of gameplay or anything. I mean, I didn't know if it was going to be an action game, which it really isn't, a Resident Evil type of game, which it has elements of, but really isn't. It was all those things and more. So I was very satisfied with this end product. My expectations were met. And from here, I just kind of, Suda 51, I guess, like I said before, everyone's, I think, nucleus point for this is No More Heroes a few years later. But for me, it was Killer7 that really set me on that path.
Nice. Yeah, for me, like we've already said, this is my first time playing a Suda 51 game. I had not heard of Suda 51 until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I started talking about video games with people online, in Discord servers and such. I'd never heard of him, never heard of this game, never heard of No More Heroes, nothing like that.
Wow.
I had a GameCube back then, but I'm younger. So like when I had the GameCube, I was playing, Super Smash Brothers and Mario, and I didn't really branch out into other stuff on the GameCube. I didn't play Resident Evil 4, for example. Like it was really like a Nintendo games machine back then. So,
I mean, I can't imagine you at that age would have been interested in a game like this anyway. Like just the nature of it. Like people call games adult. This is truly a game for adults, not just because of the content, but just like. Literally, like, I can't imagine anyone, even as like a teenager, an edgy teenager, would be interested in Killer7.
Yeah, I think so. I was 17, I guess, when this game came out, and yeah. So I don't really remember what I was playing, but it wasn't this. And it wasn't really on my radar for a long time until way in the early days of Tales from the Backlog. We used to open every episode with a what are you playing lately segment. And a former guest on the show, Adelaide, brought up Killer7 back in, I think it was the Silent Hill 2 episode. That's what she was playing at the time. And she described it and I was like, that sounds really, really unique and cool. And while she was talking, I looked up screenshots and I was like, oh, that looks really fucking cool. So I put it on the Steam wish list. I think I bought it pretty soon after that. But what actually made me want to say, okay, let's push this, let's do it, let's play it, was on Fine Time, your podcast, you had a 2-part series on the Capcom 5 that I thought was like a really excellent series that y'all did, and it really pushed Killer7 up the queue.
Well, shit, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed those episodes. I really worked hard on them, and we had the idea kicking around for a long time, but we didn't want to do it till it was right, because we're going to play 4 whole ass games, so, and kind of talk about them in a single kind of unified format, which is not easy to do all the time.
Right.
So I'm glad you enjoyed the results, and it made you want to play Killer7, because easily that was our favorite of the 5, secretly
nice.
4 because one didn't come out, but yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that gave me the push to play it. And I, to get into some opening thoughts here, I come out of this experience thinking like, number one, I thought it was a really fun game to play. I enjoyed the gameplay quite a bit. There is really nothing like it. It struck me as like a very arcadey game, and I appreciated that and the way the gameplay is designed. I came out of it also thinking that there's nothing like this game. I have never played another game that looks or plays like this or deals with the weird ass story and characters in a way that this game does. This is a weirdo game in the best way, I think. I will get into it. I also I thought the story was kind of interesting, but I also had a lot of trouble following the story, but that didn't detract from the overall experience of it. Just very, very memorable game, and one that will stick in my memory because I'm not likely to play another game like it.
Yeah, memorable. You nailed it. There really isn't anything like that. And it's very rare that you can just say this is wholly unique unto itself, because Killer7 is, whether you like it or not. And here's the thing. The reason why I suggested this to you, for us to do this, because I said to you, even if you don't like this game, you're going to find it really, really interesting at the very least, and you ended up liking the game, so which is good. So we don't have to argue about it. But it's I just, knowing you and knowing your taste, I thought you would find it interesting, and I'm glad you did.
Yeah, for sure. So we are going to take a little music break, and when we come back, we are going to set up the story of Killer7. Killer7 takes place in an alternate version of Earth, real world, real countries, alternate history type thing. It takes place in the early 21st century. In 1998, in the game's story, there was a treaty that ended all international conflict. All nuclear weapons were destroyed by firing them into the upper atmosphere and blowing them up with other missiles. Fun strategy.
Yeah. Just like that. That seems like it could go wrong, but hey,
yeah,
whatever.
Exactly. What could go wrong? Yeah. This event becomes known as Fireworks with a capital F, and it symbolizes world peace to the general populace. And in an effort to combat terrorism and pandemics and cyber terrorism and all of those fun things, a committee shuts down all air travel and public use of the internet. Fun.
Yeah.
Air transportation is replaced by a system of intercontinental expressways. However, there's a new terrorist group called the Heaven Smile that appears, targeting the United Nations and this International Ethics Committee. So already we have this interesting, real world alternate history set up in a game released in 2005, centered around terrorism.
Hey, Dave, remember back in 2005 when games were not political at all? Right. You know how we make everything political nowadays, Dave.
Everything
Don't you know
has
that?
To be political, and why can't we go back to the glory days when there were no politics in video games? Right?
It's just, oh man. I mean, look, it's always silly when people say that, but it becomes especially silly when you go back and play a game like this. I mean, like, everyone always goes to like a Metal Gear or something, which obviously is an easy target, but you don't have to look that far, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think this is like a super like interesting alternate reality, because like and by the way, they lay all of this on you in like one cutscene, all of this information. They just tell you this in like one anime cutscene. And oh, by the way, I don't know when else I'm gonna have a time to mention this. We both played the Steam port.
Yeah.
The anime cutscenes are obviously still very GameCube quality. Like, this is the most GameCube-ass GameCube port you could ever have.
Yes.
This almost, I mean, I almost never advocate for this. This almost seems like a case for AI to like kind of clean this up.
To upscale it. Yeah. It's at like fucking like 480p or whatever resolution the GameCube was running on. It looked real bad blown up on my, my monitor. You just also mention, like, just real quick, it felt like a lazy PC port. They didn't even change the buttons in the tutorials from the GameCube buttons for playing on mouse and keyboard. They didn't change it at all. I had to figure out the controls for myself.
Do you like how you still save to like slot A and slot B?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, back to the story.
Anyway, yeah, like you said, that is an aspect of the game I didn't really think about at the time, believe it or not. Maybe just because it was the times, but like, you know, the Iraq War was happening. There wasn't really end in sight, any end in sight at that point. And it was just like, you know, W was settling into his second term. It just felt like the times, you know, Killer7, even though it was like an alternate reality. It was weird. But it just kind of, you know, back then, maybe I just didn't really think of it that way. But like, yeah, Killer7 really did reflect the tenor of the time. But yeah, 18 years removed from it, now me playing it in 2023, yeah, that it's pretty apparent.
Yeah, it's obvious. It's kind of like, well, you're going to make a game based on what's going on in the real world. Well, the real world was obsessed with terrorism back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Everything was such. And, you know, one of my favorite things, and this is just one of the many reasons why I love Killer7. One of my favorite things is seeing America and in this case, American like political conflict through the eyes of Japanese people, I guess you could say. And Suda51 is especially good at this because he seems to enjoy like almost like taking a hatch at the Japanese culture. Like there's a character in this game that's like a bit like a complete anime stereotype. It's like the girl with the big eyes and purple hair, and she has a machine gun. And she has like the crazy intros, like the crazy almost like shonen anime intros, like I fight for justice and power and like etc. Almost like I guess maybe it's more magical girl, but like, you know, it's like that kind of thing. And then it has like fake Power Rangers, like fake ass Power Rangers. I guess we'll get to that.
Oh yeah, of course.
But it's clear that Suda51 has like this deep understanding of America too. Cause like, and I'll give you an example. You know how like when you get to the Cloudman stage, I guess you could say.
Yeah, the one in Texas.
The one in Texas with Mr. Umeda. And it starts out with the anime sequence with the guy saying, well, we don't get too many black folk around here, like talking to Garcia Smith, the main character. That's not something you usually hear from a Japanese game. That's something you hear from an American game, you know, because they know what Texas is like or whatever, or certain parts of Texas, I should say.
Yeah.
But like for that to come from a Japanese game is a real special understanding of America, I think.
Yeah, that's something that a long time ago I gave credit to Earthbound for having a similar kind of understanding of America and like the things that they were kind of referencing in that game. And it's something that I took points away from Final Fantasy 15 for just being like a theme park of Wild West stereotypes.
It kind of is, yeah.
The beginning of that game. But yeah, that's a good point to bring up, and it, when done right, it is impressive. And there was never a point in this, like you might get from a Kojima game, at some points where you're playing this, you're like, they don't know anything about the US, which is sometimes like you play a Metal Gear Solid and you're like, does Kojima know how the government works here at all?
I don't think he does.
But yeah, you're right. There seems to be an understanding here for sure.
I played Death Stranding about a year and a half ago, and the answer to your question is yes.
So in Killer7, you control a group of assassins. They are called the Killer7 because there are 7 of them. They're the only ones who are able to take on this terrorist group called the Heaven Smile. Heaven Smile is not like a group of fighters. They're a supernatural force. They are monsters, basically. It's not like a terrorist group as we might think of them in the real world. Is that a good description for Heaven Smile?
I think so. Yeah, they are creatures, not like we are the Heaven Smiles responsible for this. Right. They do that too. There's some of that too, or at least it's hinted at. You don't really see a whole lot of it, but they are a bunch of monsters. Yeah,
I've got Final Fantasy VII on the brain because I'm playing the remake again. It's not Avalanche we're talking about here.
No.
They're monsters. They're the enemies in this game. Killer7 are the only ones that are capable of taking them down. Killer7 are these 7 personas or projections kind of a man named Harmon Smith. And all 7 of them are different characters. They all have different sets of skills. They have different personalities. So we'll just run through them real quick. We mentioned Garcian Smith, who is kind of like the public-facing persona for the Killer7. He's a black man, wears a suit, real clean cut, unlike a lot of the rest of them.
Oh yeah, if he as cold as he is, he's the normal one, which is like,
he's the one who you would see and you'd be like, oh, that's just a normal guy, like a professional assassin almost. Dan Smith is a combat-focused Irish-American persona. The next one, I believe it's pronounced Kaede Smith, is a Japanese
Kaede
woman. Yeah. She can reveal hidden things around the environment. She has a sniper pistol. Kevin Smith is a shirtless British muscle dude, not to be confused with Jay and Silent Bob, Kevin Smith.
And he really means silent, folks. The man doesn't speak a single word.
Yep. Coyote Smith is a Latino thief character. Khan Smith is a Chinese blind, youngest of the group and smallest of the group, which kind of plays into his traversal abilities or puzzle solving abilities. Mm-hmm. And the last one is called Mask de Smith. And Mask is a Mexican luchador wrestler. Fun fact, the surname Smith was given because Suda51 loves the band The Smiths. So me and Suda51, fist bump. Love it.
I have a confession right now to make here on Tales from the Backlog. I'm a huge Morrissey solo material guy. I have never really gotten into the Smiths. I've just never listened. Obviously, I know the hits, if you want to call them that.
Right.
But I've never really explored that discography. Also, I really like Johnny Marr. I like all his projects throughout the year. So, of course he's on this, right? I've just never explored the Smiths. I have no idea why I haven't done that.
Interesting. Yeah, I recommend it. I really like the Smiths, the band, especially if you're already on board with Morrissey and the things that he sings about and stuff like that. Yeah, check him out.
Yeah, I'm a huge Morrissey person. So I don't know why that. When you were talking about Con Smith there, it just made me think of one of the presentation aspects of the game that I really enjoyed is that how when you have to, as Con Smith, get into a small space and a little cutscene where he does a little flip, a little acrobatic, you know what I mean? Under something. I love that shit.
There's a lot of flair.
There's a lot of flair. Even when you reload your gun, it's like a cutscene. It has to show the whole character doing it.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up because we have these characters. We have these 7 Smiths, basically. And then Harmon, who's the main person. But you don't play as Harmon for more than a few seconds at a time. You play as the 7. You can switch between them whenever you want. But so they're kind of the main characters. But they don't talk to people outside of each character might get a couple of cutscenes, and Garcian gets more as the story goes on. But maybe you get like one cutscene of Dan talking to somebody, or like one of Coyote talking to somebody. The rest of their personality is given through these animations that they have, the abilities that they have, and stuff like that. So I'm glad you brought up the like those animations for reloading. The other thing that gives them the personality, like a direct window into them as a person, is when you shoot one of the Heaven Smiles on their weak spot, which we'll talk about in the gameplay, but bring it up now. They all have one like bespoke line of dialogue, like a little quip they give when you hit the weak spot on an enemy.
Yes. And that's like, for me, the defining audio of this game, and the thing that has never left me over the years was especially Coyote Smith's. When he hits a weak point, it's like I'll do my best. It's like oh, you're fucked.
He really enunciates, "You're fucked."
Yes, very, very. He got up to the micro. Fucked. It's very satisfying. Maybe that's why I pick him the most. I just love to hear that. I do like Con Smith's "fuck you." It's like very childish. Fuck you.
Yep.
You know,
it is very, very teenager. Yeah. There's two that I found myself like while playing this, I would walk around the house saying to myself, and sometimes saying to the dog and stuff like that. It was Coyote's, and then Garcion's, where he just goes, "Son of a bitch," real smooth.
He's very resigned to it. Son of a bitch. This is like the 1500th Heaven Smile he's killed, you know? Yeah. It gives all this stuff, gives all the seven so much personality. Even Kevin Smith, who doesn't say a single word, he looks so distinct. He almost looks dead. He almost looks like a zombie. Yeah. You know, compared to the rest of the cast. He's wearing sunglasses. He doesn't say a word in the whole game. And it's like, but he has my favorite power, the invisibility.
Right.
Because there is some bullshit enemies that I just kind of like doop-de-doop, like sneak past. Yeah. I put that invincibility up to like 5 and just like, you know, got past everybody.
Yeah. You know, now that I think about it, like everything else that they could have done to distinguish the Seven Smiths from each other, from character designs, backgrounds, their animations when they run, their animations when they're just standing still, the way they hold their guns, everything's different between them. It's just you don't hear them talk very often.
Yeah. And it's just, but they're all memorable in that way. They give you just enough.
Yeah.
By the way, I never really got that Dan Smith was supposed to be an Irish-American kind of persona. He didn't really give that feeling to me. He was just kind of a dude. He just looked like a dude who stepped out of a manga to me. So, like, I don't know. He had that main character look to him.
He does, yeah.
So,
and his kill line, he just goes, "This is too easy." That's all it is. So.
Yeah. You know, it's not fuck you, you know, so you're not gonna remember it exactly.
It's not "you're fucked."
It's so good. Can I say that I loved using Coyote Smith's power? It is literally a fountain of blood. She slits her wrist and just like blood just fountains from just everywhere to reveal a wall, which, I mean, it's a weird way to reveal a wall. I bet anyone who's never even laid eyes on this game is thinking, like, what the hell are you talking about? You have to create a fountain of blood to, like, move past invisible wall? Yes, you do. That is Killer7.
Yeah, I wasn't clear on, like, where the blood comes from, but, yeah, it's real weird. I was tempted, like, wondering if that comes from like her backstory or something. I don't think it does. It's just a weird power.
Yeah. I don't think it does either. No, never mind. I can't say that yet. We have to go behind the spoiler curtain for that. Never mind. Yeah. I will hold that thought for later. Speaking
of weird, the Seven also run into a couple of recurring NPCs throughout the game. 3 main ones. You have Yoonhyun, who is kind of like a hint system in the game. You can pay some of your blood currency to get a hint for whatever puzzle's going on. You have Travis, who is this tank top wearing dude who's just kind of lounging around a lot of places you go. Travis gives you backstory on like what's going on in the world. And then you have if there was a mascot for this game, it's probably Iwazaru. Iwazaru is wearing this red kind of GIMP costume. His
Yep.
eyes are sewn shut. It's a real design. It's something that like, oh, someone's been thinking about this design for a long time.
Mm.
And Iwazaru is there to kind of like set your missions in motion and just kind of, you go and talk to him and he half talks about like what's going on, but the other half is just telling you how fucked everything is and how you're in a tight spot. This is bad. This is really, really bad.
Oh yeah, Master, we're in trouble. Do you like how he just pieces out during Cloudman because he's like, oh man, afros are weird, I better go. So he just it's not he's just like not there, and it's just like, okay, that was strange, I guess. Iwazaru, you need to explore your feelings on this. This is not good. Anyway, like I do like that. I'm sorry, I can never pronounce the Yunhyun. Yeah, I'm really bad at saying that one. I like that if you do take the hint from him, he just has permanent double fingers like right at you. It's like, oh, you poor bastard, you had to use my hint, you piece of shit. Here you go. The game makes you feel really shitty for wanting the hint. You know, and this is obviously before that. Well, I guess like stuff like game FAQs existed or whatever. But like, if you wanted that in-game hint, they really made you feel like an asshole for it, which is funny.
Yeah, there are good hints though, so they usually help.
Yeah, they are pretty helpful. Iwazaru to me, it sort of defines the game, though. As you said, he's like, if you said he's almost like the mascot. Travis as well, because Travis has all the gossip, he has all the lore. And also, Travis is great because, like you said, his tank tops, it always has a different word saying like, you know, sexual or like, you know, bronco. It always has some phrase on it. You know, it's just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, they're always funny. Yeah.
Sometimes just as killer. Did you know someone took all the files from the actual game, all his shirts, and like turned them into shirts on like Redbubble or whatever? Oh. Like the actual, like, you know, like, yeah. So if you want that shirt that says sexual or whatever, and Grasshopper Manufacturer tweeted and said, hey, we're totally cool with this. Go buy these shirts.
Hell yeah.
Like,
awesome.
So
good
that
on
was
them.
Yeah, that was great that they did that. Anyway, Iwazaru is the mascot of the game to me as well. He's weird, he's cryptic, it's often funny and super interesting. I always wanted to hear what he had to say, even though it made no sense at all sometimes. It's fantastic. He is the soul of the game to me, Iwazaru.
Yeah, and Iwazaru is a good point to kind of jump into. Like I said in the beginning, I had a lot of trouble following the story. This is one thing that makes it tough is Iwazaru and Travis and Yunhyun and other NPCs that you meet. There are some other recurring ones, but I don't know their names, and they're not like, well, I don't want to say they're not important, but they're not as important, not as central to the delivery of the story. All of them.
Those are the three, really.
Yeah. They don't have real voice acting like the Smiths do. They talk in this warbled gibberish, basically. Sometimes you'll pick out a word or something like that if you're reading along with what they're saying, which you should be because you will not understand them. So this is one of the things, and along with the storytelling, which we'll talk about in a second, I had a lot of trouble focusing during these. I have some trouble with attention, and so I have trouble with attention during games where they're speaking English. So when we have this where it's not a real language, it's just warbled nonsense that they're speaking, I had trouble paying attention. Sometimes Iwazaru sticks around and you can talk to him again. Sometimes he just pieces out. So if he said something important, that was lost forever for me. Yeah. And a lot of the story got lost because of that.
I understand what you mean. I think sometimes it would be detrimental if you could talk to Iwazaru when he said something like really out of date, I guess is why they kind of make him disappear. It's an imperfect system, but I think they did that for a reason, not just like, well, you missed it, you know. But as for the gibberish speak, it's obviously an artistic choice because they're dead. You know, the dead people speak that way. The people who are alive have actual voice acting, but most of the people you talk to are dead. So, you know, and then of course, if you talk to somebody that was alive before they had voice acting and they are no longer alive, then, they're going to speak to you in that gibberish manner. Which which I don't know. I think it's a great artistic touch. I understand what you're saying though about following along.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, and maybe it makes me a bad podcaster for not giving 100% of my attention, but I am only human. I suppose I could have gone and watched it all on YouTube, but I didn't really want to do that. It's part of this podcast is the goal of this podcast is not to fully explain and fully explore the story of Killer7. We're talking about our experiences playing it. So that's part of my experience. The other part of it is that the story, while it has a relatively simple, understandable setting and setup, like we brought up before, it then goes into complete fantasy land told in very weird, nonlinear, and confusing ways. We have a political storyline about the relationship between countries. We have a storyline about elections. We have the story of the Smith Syndicate and how they came to be. Yeah. And then we have multiple smaller stories about all of the different characters that you meet and how they get into the position that they are now, or maybe you meet them and maybe they die. Maybe you kill them and then they become a different type of character later in the game. There's a lot going on in the story. I probably picked up on what I consider to be the easiest part, which is what happened to the Smith Syndicate. How did they come to be? I got that part. But the political stuff, I had a really hard time following it. And then some of the other kind of like other storylines, I went to read the Wikipedia entry after I finished the game, and I was like, holy shit, that was going on? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot. But quite frankly, I don't think you're supposed to pick up on every detail because they didn't make it in such a way where you're supposed to. I'm not sure any of us are supposed to care that much. I feel like it's one of those things where you're supposed to just kind of let it wash over you, It's vibes over substance, I guess, if I want to put it in a short way. And I know people think that's like sometimes derogatory to say to something that's like super stylized. That doesn't mean that it has no substance. Uh-huh. It's just that, like, I don't know. I'll put it this way, since I compare everything to 90s hip hop, and I'll do so again. Uh-huh. So like Busta Rhymes is like one of my favorite rappers of all time. Not my absolute favorite, but he's like top 5, right? That man had absolutely nothing to say in those raps, Dave. Nothing. Like, I dare you to tell me what Put Your Hands Where My Eyes Could See is about. Do you know what that song's about? Because I don't, and it doesn't matter. It's pretty words, right? That's how I kind of feel about Killer7. It's just a cool vibe that you enjoy in video game form. If I want real storytelling, I'll turn to something else, like Killer7. Yeah, you'll get something, but don't come here thinking you're going to get some like nice, concise, tight story. It's too weird for all of that, and it doesn't make any attempt to tie it together. It's the Killer7 is the Busta Rhymes of video games. That's my statement for today. I
like that. If I clipped stuff for social media, that would be the clip, but I don't do it. So everyone who listens to the episode they'll be the only ones who get to enjoy that. I like that. As soon as you brought up Busta Rhymes, I was like, you're right. I'm just kind of bobbing along to the rhythm that he's going with, in his songs. Yeah, I don't go to Busta Rhymes for lyricism, for sure.
Nope.
I do think that this game does have things to say, especially with that political storyline. I just don't feel like they would make this setting and go through the trouble of having this kind of like political and international relations based storyline if there was no thing that Suda51 wanted to say there. But I had a really hard time connecting with it. I think I can see where it is, but like I just couldn't follow. And I think it's like if I go on Wikipedia and read it, I can follow it. It's not like it's too confusing or too smart or something like that. It's purely the way the story is delivered. I didn't know what like timeline I was in half the time in this game, let alone being able to piece together, all of these moving parts in this like developing story of international relations.
Yeah. Games are not political, though, Dave. I need to remind you of this again. Okay?
Yeah, you're right. I should back down here. That's right. Games only became political in the last like 5 years or so. Yeah.
I hear you. I totally hear you. I guess for me, maybe this will explain it better. I never actually tried. I don't think at any point during this game, even my original playthrough, I ever was like, okay, that's going to come around to this, or what does that mean for that? I literally just took every scene as just its own thing from the get-go. And so maybe that's why I never like got too confused about it, because I never tried to understand it.
Yeah.
So I think I just came at it from a totally different perspective.
Well, you could experience it this way, and if you do, you will be left with just a collection of very memorable scenes, very creative characters, memorable people, and memorable scenes that happen. Because there is a lot of stuff, like later in the spoiler section, we're going to just kind of rapid fire through some memorable stuff that happens, and we've got some real weirds. You mentioned the knockoff Power Rangers earlier. There's a whole chapter about them.
Yep.
Like, there's a bunch of memorable stuff, and memorable in a way where, like, this is clearly a game, something I give, like, the Kojima games credit for, and all the others where there's, like, Kojima doesn't make Metal Gear Solid games by himself, but those are his visions. And this game is Suda51's vision, and you will never mistake it for anything other than that.
Yeah. It is totally just his, yeah, and like I said, actually, about a year and a half ago, I did play Death Stranding, which I did enjoy, for the most part. There was some things about it that I found really obnoxious, but like for the most part, I enjoyed it just because it was so fucking weird.
Yes.
It was so, and that's all I really wanted from it, and that's what I got. And Killer7 is the same way. You were talking about scenes, like scenes that happen, like cool scenes and like other stuff. It's like, whoa, that was weird. And I think that really illustrates how I think about this game. Like there's that, I'm not going to go into too many details here because I don't want to spoil, but there's a boardroom scene with two Japanese businessmen. That starts a chapter, and they're saying stuff like, for 65 years, we worked so hard to restore this country, and now it's all going up in smoke again because of this current conflict or whatever. And it's like, by the way, games are not political, everybody. And, there's that thing, right? There's a deadly game of Mahjong. Do you remember that one? 4 guys playing Mahjong?
Yep.
Okay, there's the fitness club scene where Dan Smith kind of has this moment against Curtis Blackburn, a villain in the game, and he's saying stuff to him in vagaries, and I'm glad this was vague because they're talking about orphans and shit, and he's like, well, he only takes the girls and stuff like that, and I'm like, whoa, I'm glad to not know any more about this. That's fine. By the way, do you like the reoccurring bit of the guy calling Garcia on the phone? Dear Mr. Smith, have you decided on your vote? If you haven't, let the Republican Party make use of your precious vote. Thank you, and have a nice day. I loved it. I didn't feel right if I didn't hear that to begin a chapter in Garcia's trailer.
Yep. Yeah. All of those, and there's more stuff that we're going to save for the spoiler section. We've been talking about the story for a while now, but there is a lot of like individual stuff that I do think, like, if someone puts in the work, I've seen like, what's the word? Thumbnails of YouTube videos of people who did put in the work. I didn't watch any of the videos, just, didn't grab me that way. But I do think that if you're going to put in the work, I think that you could come out of this with like a very clear story like that. But for me, and it sounds like for you too, this will exist as like a collection of very memorable scenes that stick out, and they're cool, they're weird, and everything in between.
Yeah, and that's all. That's what I came for, and that's what I got. So I fortunately came with the right mentality to this game from the beginning.
Yeah. So let's talk about one of the other things that's really striking about Killer7, which is the way that it looks. First of all, this is a game that if you look at screenshots of video games, you will never miss the Killer7 screenshot. Like you could give me 1,000 screenshots of 1,000 different games. I will find the Killer7 screenshot if there is one. Nothing else really looks like this. It's very distinctive.
Yeah. It's one of the more distinctive. I mean, I hate being so hyperbolic, but it's true. It's honestly one of the most distinctive games I've ever seen. Like as an art style, as like a visual identity, as direction. I mean, like literal camera angles and shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just insane in a great way because the game is insane.
Yeah.
I would describe these visuals as, if we think back to 2005, it was a time where you were trying to go for styles that you couldn't quite depict before in video games. Like the previous generation didn't have the fidelity to do something like Killer7, right? So like, we had like cell shaded stuff, right? That's where your mind goes first, like the striking visual like the profiles, I guess, of the characters, right? You could take that back to like stuff like Jet Set Radio if you want, but then you add the dark graphic novel stuff on top of it, and then you think stuff like, Sin City or 300. 300 wasn't out yet, but you know what I'm saying, right? And that like very polygonal, almost said political, that very political look that Killer7 has.
Political. How many times do we have to say this?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry. That very polygonal look, that like Gorod shaded, like no textures look to it. Almost looking like an old Virtua Fighter, but spooky, right? Like that, like very like that like it's very dark. Sometimes the lighting is very moody. And the color choices too are like outrageous sometimes, like just very, not just bold, but also monochrome or just pastel, whatever they're feeling like at the time, and that feels more American comics to me, right? Than something like a manga, obviously, because a manga's black and white, but you know what I'm trying to say. It just makes the whole thing look super surreal, which is the point of the game. So like mission accomplished. When art meets technology in a way like this, like I'm trying to think of my favorites, whether it's like Destiny or MDK or whatever, whenever like the art style meets the technology fully is something that I always appreciate. And Killer7 is like, for me, just on that level, like top 3 for me, maybe.
Yeah, and games that have like that very stylized look to them, and especially on these older consoles, the ones that are not going for photorealistic graphics or the closest that they could get at the time, stuff like Killer7, that is the stuff that like I played this. I already said I think it's a pretty lazy PC port. They did not do everything they could to make it look good on a 4K screen, but the game, outside of the cutscenes, like the anime cutscenes, the gameplay sections still look really, really good. No complaints there whatsoever.
Yeah, and obviously for this PC port, they made the game 60 frames a second. It was originally 30 on GameCube, but now that I think about it, I'm surprised a game this textureless and kind of like single camera, like, fixed camera perspective was not 60. Maybe they just didn't feel like working on it. Did you notice the reload animations are still annoyingly 30? Like they're very,
They do kind of, I almost wondered if it was a stylistic choice in a game with so many other stylistic choices.
It's weird. I think they just couldn't fix it in time or something because, well, it's only noticeable because you see them so often. Usually a reload animation in a game isn't a big deal. It's a big deal in Killer7, as we said. So, but yeah. Porting a mid 2000s GameCube game to Steam is not always the easiest thing in the world. So I'm glad it's a very bare bones port. As we said, it still has like slot A, slot B saving, like you have memory cards, even though you don't, but it works. One thing I also really like about the visual identity of this game is like the artistic use of Japanese kanji.
Yeah.
Which is used in a variety of ways, especially like when you start a chapter, you do this thing where you put a laser sight over your target and then you press the A button and it just goes and they explode into like these bloody kanji.
Yeah.
It's so wild. It's amazing. And when this game came out, I knew 0 kanji. Now playing in 2023, I know over 1,000 kanji. So now, looking back at this game, I get it. Now you don't have to read the stuff, obviously. I played the game back in the day. I just took it as like artistic flair. That's all it needs to be. But if you can read it, it's a little bit more of a treat. It's fun.
Nice little bonus. Yeah, for sure. A couple of like, if we're still talking about visuals, and I agree, those parts with the kanji, when you open up a chapter, those are striking. There's a couple, like when you first boot up the game, the main menu is striking. The use of colors, the cackling laughter in the background. And then you start a chapter and you get this screen where you put a laser sight on a shadow, basically. You shoot and like you said, it explodes into these bloody circles and they form a kanji, but it's very artistically done. So it really sets the tone for like what's going to happen for the rest of the game. From a gameplay perspective, I think the visual style works really, really well too. We'll talk about in gameplay. We've already mentioned you're kind of on rails in the game and you don't have freedom of exploration and movement. You're going where the game lets you go and you're looking for items. It's an adventure game. So a lot of, point and click adventures, you get into this shitty version of pixel hunting, what's interactable, what's not interactable. That is not a problem in Killer7 because a lot of the areas are really minimalist, except for the stuff that's important, like the enemies, the items that you can pick up. Maybe there's this weird environmental puzzle you have to solve, but you'll know that that's the thing you have to solve because everything else is pretty, like I said, minimalist, bare bones in a good way.
Yes, completely agree. The clean look of the game supports the, like you said, adventure aspects of it, especially the fact that you don't have to search for items. You're literally there. It's like, oh, you want to pick up this thing? Press this direction and press A. Okay, you got it, right?
Yep.
And I like that all that stuff is easy, if you will, so you can just kind of enjoy the Killer7.
Yeah, it's one of those games where like, if you explore all the rooms, if you go to all the places that are available to you, you will find all the key items you need pretty easily. Like there was a couple times I needed to check a guide, but it was because like there was a 2-way intersection. I went one way and then forgot about the intersection to go the other way or something like that. It wasn't like I went in this room, I scoured this room, and there was a key hidden somewhere that I couldn't. That shit never happens in Killer7. So much appreciated. And then the Heaven Smile enemies, we mentioned them before. They're the antagonists. They are the monsters that you're fighting. They all have these very cool, creepy, weird designs. A lot of different designs. Most of them are humanoid, but they look like, lizards or like little Godzillas or something like that. They all have these weird faces, these creepy smiles, but then there are a lot of other strange designs that don't map onto like traditional monster designs. There's one that's a rolling ball and there's one that's this
That's weird. I'm sorry. I always forget about them until I play the game again. It's like, oh no.
You see them. Yeah, the rolling balls.
This is so weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And they jingle like jingle bells when they're rolling. It's real weird. There's another one that's like a mass of flesh up in the ceiling that's just laying eggs. They're strange. But despite all of these weird designs and, we mentioned minimalist design and other aspects, you're looking for the weak points to shoot them. And the weak points are very obvious, very clear, no matter what kind of Heaven Smile they are. I never came up against one, unless they don't have a visible weak point, never came up against one where I was like, I don't know what the fuck to do. It's always just like, no, shoot that spot.
Although there are a couple enemies, like you said, where I straight up did not know what the fuck to do. And even on my, third or fourth playthrough here, played a couple times on GameCube, played last year, played right now, I still don't actually really know what to do. And that's where the Kevin Smith comes in, or it's like,
right.
I'm just going to zip by these guys because I really don't know what to do. But I'm glad that's an option, right? They obviously knew, like, okay, if someone just wants to, like, quote unquote, cheese the game, they can. Like, if you really want to, you know? And I like when games back then kind of wanted you to work for it most of the time. But obviously, Killer7 doesn't have a whole lot of tradition in the way of, like, bosses or like, you know, like these. I mean, like, it does have bosses, but do we really want to consider? I mean, not really, right?
A lot of the bosses they're not traditional boss fights. They're more like, this is a weird puzzle that you're going to have to figure out with the abilities that you have. It's not like, here's a regular Heaven Smile, but you have to shoot it 60 times instead of 2, you know. It's not like that. I think the smiles are a good chance to talk about sound design too, because that's another striking thing about the Heaven Smile enemies. They're invisible when you first find them, but you'll always know they're there because they do this weird laughter. That's
I love it.
How they announce themselves. And then you use one of you right click if you're playing on keyboard and mouse to show them. And then once you kill them, they do this like shrieking laughter when they're dead. Kind of like the shrieking laughter in the main menu when you first boot up the game. Mm-hmm. It's, again, weird, but memorable and serves the gameplay really well.
It's really cool. I mean, obviously, we've talked about a number of sound design things in this game, but like that in particular is so good because it's like, it's so instantly, I don't want to say iconic because like not enough people have played this game to have considered it that, but like It would be if it was popular, in which it will never be popular because it's Killer7. But it's great. I love the guys who not the ones that are in a ball, but the ones who do like sort of somersaults towards you and are just like ha ha over it. It's like, oh my God, shut up. I don't want to hear you anymore. But yeah, occasionally, me and a friend still, like, we played the game back in the day, and when we talk now, we still give each other a like another Heaven Smile. We still think of it every so often, or a you're fucked. Like we still say that shit to each other. So yeah, it's, if you want memorable, there it is.
Yep. Again, coming back up in the sound design too. The music in Killer7 is credited to Masafumi Takada, who I know personally from the God Hand soundtrack, which just bops. I love it. Yeah. And the Kid Icarus Uprising soundtrack. Past episode of Tales from the Backlog. I don't like that game, but I do love that soundtrack. So good job to them. And then the other person credited is Jun Fukuda. So what do you think about the music in this game?
I think the music in Killer7 is really good. It's obviously very 2005. It still has that like leftover like jungle or like drum and bass sound to it, to a lot of it. When you're just kind of walking around, especially I'm thinking of the amusement park level where you're just kind of cruising through those hallways, those weird hallways, and you have that music going. It's great. It's that unmistakable like 2000s electronica, which to me is good. I like that shit, but that's fine. But you also have you have like moody piano moments. You have some like creepy atmospheric stuff sometimes, and then you have silence when it's necessary. It's almost like Resident Evils of old, like the 90s ones where you just had this grab bag of whatever was needed at that point. There is one song in this game, though, that really slaps, is when you, Jesus Christ, I forget the name of the place. It's when you're going to the gate to the next place and you have to go up and down stairs, and then all of a sudden plays this club jam.
I wrote that I wrote that in the notes. It's really like one of the only notes I wrote about the music is the Vinculum Gate dance music fucks. I love it.
Vinculum Gate, thank you.
And it stands out too because, like you had said, for a lot of the levels, there isn't music. You're walking around, it's footsteps and atmospheric sounds. You got to hear the Heaven Smiles when they come up, when they do their laughter. So the lack of music really helps there. And then suddenly, when it's time to like go to the boss, you go to this special place You go up and down these stairs and this bumping dance music is playing. And like, you're only in that room for like 10 seconds, but I'm sitting here bobbing my head. And then you have to go back through that to go, you know, to the end of the level. And I'm waiting to go back in there because I can get that hit of that song again. I love it.
I like how when you're giving the guy the things, like you can hear it from the outside. It's like a version where it's like you're outside the club.
Exactly.
And you hear the booming bass or whatever. It's like you can kind of hear it. I love when games do that.
Yeah.
So it's good. But you can stand there and listen to it. It's great. It is a full ass song. You can listen to it for more than the 10 seconds. So
I have listened to it on YouTube, in fact.
Anytime you want to shut up and jam, you can stand there and listen to it. But no, I think the music in this game is really good. Like you said, it's not always like music, you know, sometimes it's atmospheric stuff, but that counts too. That's always good.
Of course.
So, you know, I really enjoyed it.
It seems to me like, other than that dance track, a lot of the music, like, it works to set the mood of wherever you are or whatever's happening. And this is a game with a bunch of other like really loud aesthetic choices. And the music is one of the more like not traditional, because nothing in this game is super traditional, but the music does kind of hang back and let the other stuff take the center stage, I guess.
For sure. Totally agree.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to that Vinculum Gate dance track here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the gameplay in Killer 7. So we have kind of touched on the gameplay a little bit. Killer 7 is a very arcadey, on-rails game. Not a rail shooter in the sense that you are only moving forward, but you can control if you go forward, you can turn around and run backward. You have free reign over the tracks that they've laid out in these levels. So say like you're exploring a school, you can run down the hallway. Sometimes it'll give you the option to go into classrooms, but if you go past a classroom and they don't want you to go in there, it won't even give you the option to interact. You'll just keep running. So you don't have free reign. You are on rails. I think this is another one of those design decisions where they have a certain thing they want you to do. They have certain things that they want you to find, certain like things, puzzles that you're going to be working on. They want you to focus on the important stuff. I think that taking away all of this control helps.
Yeah, because like imagine this game where you could roam around wherever you want. You would get so lost because a lot of the areas, I mean, like they're showing you exactly what they want you to show you for a reason. This, I will try to avoid getting into one of my rants about how we need to take back the control of the camera from video games, but that's another thing. It will surely frustrate some people who will probably just think, why can't I just go over there? The answer is most likely there's nothing to see there.
Yeah.
The answer can be also they don't want you to see that yet or whatever, which is fine. But I think that will be the thing. And I think that's why this game, I mean, I think everyone who has played the game likes it because you got to be a certain type of person to even like seek this out. But that's why I don't think this game could ever have been a mainstream hit because of that adherence to its adventure game roots. Can you imagine? I swear it feels like under the wrong publisher, they would have just been like, well, why isn't this a first person shooter? Or why isn't that, you know, like I feel like this game could have been easily ruined by a number of people, Electronic Arts. So like, I just don't, I like that it was allowed to be what it is, I guess. I like that you just kind of move from place to place on rails, and it's just that.
Yeah, and it is a first-person shooter, but only when you're holding your gun. The rest of it's in third person, so you get to see your character run. You have these dramatic camera angles and stuff like that. So I agree with you. I think that, like, one of the reasons that they did it this way is because they only want you to focus on the important stuff. Ask yourself if you're playing this and wondering why it is this way. Would you have preferred to be able to interact with every door and they just say, "Oh, the door's busted"? Is that better? I don't think it is. They just remove all that shit. Like I'm thinking of Silent Hill or something like that, where there's tons of doors, but you can only interact with like 30% of them. So this game just says, no, you're not interacting with the ones that aren't important. Just move on.
Yeah.
So basically what you're doing is you do have free reign of where you go. So you're making your way through these levels, doing backtracking from time to time, doing these adventure game puzzles. And a lot of what you're doing in the meantime, like from point A to point B, is since you're on these tightly controlled tracks, they have these tightly designed combat encounters set up where sometimes there are a certain number of Heaven Smiles there. Sometimes Heaven Smiles will continuously respawn if you take too long in one area. But you'll always know that they're there because you'll hear that sound cue. What you have to do is you have to stop. You can't run and shoot. You have to stop, pull up your weapon. Hey, Resident Evil 4, Capcom 5, stop and shoot. You have to stop, pull out your gun, right click to like scan the environment and reveal the smile that's out there waiting, and then kill it. Sometimes combat can get a bit repetitive because the smiles, all they're basically doing is running at you. There are very few long range attacks in the game. Most of what they do is just run up, and if they touch you, they explode. Some of them kill you in one hit. Most of them don't. And it depends on what character you're using too, how badly you get hurt. But that's what you're doing. You go through these hallways, shooting the weak points, instant kills the Heaven Smiles, and you get to absorb blood. It's kind of like your ring the bell, everybody, but it's kind of like it's your currency, but it can also be used to heal you. So I guess I'm not going to do the Dark Souls reference, but that's how you get money in the game. You're using blood. So you get those from killing the smiles, and you get more blood from hitting the weak spots for those instant kills.
Yeah, it's a very interesting type of how do I say it? Recursive is not the right term I want. I like it basically because you can spend that currency, if you will, the way you want, because you can use that stuff to upgrade your guys. You can upgrade the ones that you want. And they do have stoppers in place to because when you go back to the TV, by the way, if you're in the save room, you can select your next smith on a really old TV, which I mean, just talk about aesthetic. But you can also go there to have the blood guy turn in your blood, but at some point during a chapter, he might just put up hey, that's enough blood. He puts up the close sign for the day, and it's like, nope, you can't do any more of that.
Yeah, you can grind a little bit, but there's a point where they'll be like, okay, that's enough, and you're not leveling up anymore in this level.
Yeah, which is good. I liked it. I liked that they had a cute little way of hey, I'm on break now. No, to do that. And I like that that's also the way you restore your health. I always these days I always get dumb and just call it the woke eye, the fucking Illuminati eye, it shows your health, which is weird. I like the sound effect it makes. So when you get full, it has this very energized, electronic, like this buzzer sound. I can't even begin to imitate it, but that's another piece of aspect of sound design I enjoy. But the fact that that's also used for your special moves, the thing that reveals your life, is also the currency you use to do have Kevin turn invisible or have Dan do the Hellion shot or whatever.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that about the game, I guess, that it's the same pool.
Yeah. It's if anyone's listening and thinking oh, well, I'm using the same resource for 3 different things, do you ever feel like you're not getting enough? The answer is no. I never felt that way. You don't get enough to fully level up all of the smiths or even level up all the skills on 1 or 2 of them. But you'll quickly find your favorites. And the general advice that I came up with is find 1 or 2 that you really like of the smith characters, level them up level up their damage, level up their health, stuff like that. And then keep everybody else like a little bit lower, but you don't have to worry about a situation where like you need all of your smiths at max level or something like that. It's not that kind of game.
Yeah, it's not that kind of game. Also, there isn't a whole lot of situations where they make you play as a particular one.
Right.
That happens on very rare occasions, but it's not very and even if it does, you're not going to be like underpowered or you're going to be fucked if you're going to be fucked if your guy is underpowered, like say you haven't powered up K-Day or something like that. You're not going to be like, oh no, they're making me play this one little section of her, I'm screwed. That's not going to be the case.
Yeah. Sometimes at the beginning of levels, you'll only have access to like 2 or 3 of the smiths, and by killing enemies, you'll gain access to the other ones. So you will get all of them at a certain point in all the levels. So as you're going, if a character dies, then you start back at the save room at the TV, you pick another smith, and you have 2 choices. You can pick Garcian and try to go back to the spot where the last person died. Garcian's big ability is he can revive the other smiths. So if you get back there, there's a nice cutscene of him picking up this bloody burlap sack and reviving the smith. Or you can just take on another persona and continue on with the level. I never did that. I always just took Garcian out. You're never that far away from a save room anyway, so go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Also, that is the only way you can game over if Garcian dies. Because if you're out there trying to get your other guy and he dies, that's the only time you'll have to reload your save.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that can happen. It's rare because the game isn't that difficult, and also exactly where the meat bag is, right?
Right. Yeah.
But and also I meant to say this during earlier, but I guess it's more of a gameplay thing, so I'm glad I forgot until now. The fact that, like, just story-wise, a camera will be on you, and then Garcian will change into one of the other personas, all of a sudden, that's one aspect of, like, story or whatever that I actually do wish I knew a lot more about.
Yep,
like,
same.
why did that happen? Yeah, like, there's a bunch of surveillance cameras, as there is in life anywhere, right? So, like, let's say you're walking up to a gas station, and then all of a sudden the game will cut to the perspective of that camera of him walking into the gas station, and then he'll just change into Dan Smith or whatever for some reason. I understand sometimes it does that because that's the person who's going to talk in the next cutscene. So it needs to be that person. But sometimes it'll happen for seemingly no reason. They just want you to play this little section of the game as that character, I guess. And it's like, okay, I guess. It's weird. Yeah. I don't know.
So the different smiths we mentioned, they all have different like out of combat abilities, but they all well, you play similar because they all have guns, but they all have a role to play. And like, you have 7 characters, and I definitely had my favorites, but this is not a game where I only used my favorites. There was always a situation for the other characters. So I'll just run through them real quick. Dan has just a really powerful pistol. He has a charge shot combat ability. That's his special ability. Kaede fights with a sniper pistol, so there are situations where you need to shoot something that's really far away. There's a couple of like, quote, boss fights where you need that. And then she also has that ability where she can reveal hidden walls and stuff like that. Kevin can turn invisible, and he fights with throwing knives, and he can throw them really quickly. So that helps. Coyote can pick locks out in the environment, which is really, essential. It's not great. It's essential.
Yeah, you got to have it.
Coyote has another pistol. Khan can run really, really fast, and his special move, he has 2 special moves. He can fit through small places. He can also run even faster. That's his like power up. And he fights with double pistols. So if you have a situation where you need to shoot something quickly and a lot, you can use Khan. And then Mask has these 2 hand cannon, like grenade launcher type guns, and you can destroy some walls and stuff in the environment. And I love this. You can do wrestling moves on stuff in the environment. So like, let's say there's a stack of 2x4s blocking a door. The way you get rid of it is Mask will pile drive those into the ground. because he's a wrestler.
That's so ridiculous. It's the kind of thing, honestly, that I did not think about at all back in the day. I didn't bat a single eyelash. I was like, sure, he can pile drive the 2x4s. Okay.
Yeah.
But now I think about how ridiculous it is nowadays. But like when I was like 23 or whatever, it's like, so what? Okay. Yeah, all of them. I like that all of them are useful. There is a time and place for all of them, and you can also pick favorites.
Yeah.
There isn't it's very rarely a case where you have to be this particular one. It almost never happens. You can usually use whoever you want, and I like that. I don't know about you. I almost always roll Coyote if I can, not just because of you're fucked, but like I don't know. I think the power of this pistol is right for me. It's a little inaccurate compared to some other ones, but I liked it. Mask is really great once you power him up. Like he starts out not so great, but as the game goes on, you can find some power ups for him that really, then he can just wreck anything. It's kind of ridiculous. I like the star turn of it.
Yeah, I didn't use Mask a whole lot because his guns only shoot once before you have to reload, and it's a pretty long reload. Mm-hmm. I rolled with Dan. Dan felt like get used to playing Killer7, just play as Dan. He has a bunch of health. His gun is really powerful. He's easy. Kaede I rolled with because of the sniper pistol, and then once I played as Coyote and heard that "you're fucked" voice line, I was like, I'm throwing Coyote in the rotation. The only one I really didn't use that often was Kevin, except for situations where I needed to be invisible.
Yeah, I used Kevin a lot. I used him a lot more than I typically do in this current playthrough, just because, I know where stuff is and I know where now I can cheese some stuff by being invisible. Where's the perfect time to do it. So I used him more than usual. But before it was just kind of a once in a while thing, like, okay, this is kind of giving me trouble. If I need to use invisibility, I can. Then yeah. I do want to say one thing, and I don't know how much you know about this topic, but before we get in, we're going to talk puzzles in a second, and I want to talk about it this way, or kind of introduce it this way, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, Our friends Bill and Thrack, they do a podcast called the 3DO Experience, which is it's currently on hiatus, but I wanted to shout it out anyway because there's a number of great episodes anyone out there can go listen to, so go listen to them. They recently did an episode on D, the Kenji Eno project. Kenji Eno, if anyone doesn't know what that is, he had a company back in the day. He made a very weird number. He made a very great number of weird, rather, games in the 90s. Mm-hmm. One of them being D, as I said, and there's a sequel, D2. There's Enemy Zero. These games are so bizarre and so out there. Hey, kind of like Killer7, right? Mm-hmm. While during this recent playthrough, and partly because I heard their episode on D, I was just thinking to myself, was Suda51 he had to have been influenced by Eno's work. It just seems impossible that he wasn't. Maybe he wasn't, but to me, Kenji Eno is the original, Japanese, yes, Kojima existed, but you know what I mean? In this kind of weird space, making these weird games with the technology available to him at the time, the best he could. I kind of feel, and of course I like Kenji Eno's games as much as I like Suda51's because I'm that kind of weirdo. But I don't know how much you know about his work, but it had to have influenced Suda51. I couldn't help but thinking about it while playing this.
Gotcha. Yeah, I never heard of that before. And it turns out that D is just a terrible game name for SEO. So when I'm trying to find screenshots, it's rough. Is it the game with the person with a TV for a head?
No, it is not.
Yeah, failure. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to hit up Bill and Thrack for D.
I mentioned Johnny Marr earlier, and one of his side projects is with Bernard Sumner from New Order, and it's called Electronic. The band is called Electronic. that is the worst SEO on the face of the planet.
Electronic band, shit. Electronic music, shit. Electronic concert, damn it.
Yeah, electronic 90s. No, that's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just... yeah,
I keep getting all this
just...
Moby. God damn it.
Yep. BT, again, no, I want electronic.
So we've explained the gameplay. We've talked about some of the strategy behind it, but I said at the top of the show, I found the gameplay to be really fun, a little bit repetitive, but repetitive fun things, and never like... only rare times where it was like, I go into a hallway and there's like 4 Heaven Smile right fucking there. And it was like, I don't know what I could have done there to avoid this. Other than that, rare occurrences. I had a really, really good time playing this. The fact that I was not able to connect with the story, you know, like weird shit that I don't quite understand will only go so far. I wanted to keep playing this a lot of times because I thought this gameplay was really fun. And I want to know how you feel about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly how I feel about it. It just made me want to see what's next. I wanted to see the next weird thing. That's all I really need in a game like this, especially something adventure. And it's like usually in adventure, it's about the story. You want to see what's happening in the story next. You kind of do in this, but you know you're not going to like understand it, right? Mm-hmm. You just want to see the next weird thing. Like I said, I wanted to, okay, what's going to happen when I go into this room? Oh, we're going to have a weird game of Mahjong in one of the weirdest cutscenes I've ever seen. Okay. You know, like you just want to see it. So yeah.
The other aspect of this is the adventure game puzzles, which we've talked about before, and we've actually talked about their design a little bit and how they're friendlier than a lot of adventure games are as far as puzzles go. The logic behind using items in specific situations is usually pretty easy to figure out. There's not a whole lot of, you know, like tie a rope around the chicken and then put it in the cannon, and then that's going to help you defeat the poison ivy or some bullshit like that. There's very few items that you actually get, and I think crucially, one of the things that makes this easier than a lot of adventure games is there are these rings that you pick up that have elemental properties, and you'll use them to solve adventure game puzzles. Those are the only things that persist from level to level. And a lot of times those are the only things that you need. There are other things that you find that you'll use for puzzles, but like you're not going to pick up something in level 2 and then use it in level 6 unless it's one of those rings. And there's only 7 of the rings. So you're not going to get overwhelmed by options, and you're not going to like come to a point and be like, oh, there's a thing stuck up on a streetlight. I wonder, should I use the fire ring here? No, you're not going to use the fire ring. You're going to use the wind ring to get it down. Right. And so a lot of it makes sense, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, a lot of it makes sense, and I like that they give you a lot of help. Like we said, we had that hint guy earlier who, if you really want a big-ass hint, or sometimes he'll just straight up tell you what to do.
That's the thing, too. Like, he will give you a hint. It'll be a vague hint, but it will be a hint. And then if you want like the capital H hint, you can pay him for it.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And Iwazaru and Travis will also tell you stuff. Iwazaru will say sometimes before you get somewhere, oh, you know, let the Hellion handle this one, you know, meaning Dan Smith, because he knew the Hellion shot, you know, like, and stuff like that. So they will give you hints about how to beat enemies sometimes. I mean, that's not a puzzle, but I mean, I guess sometimes it kind of is. Mm-hmm. I like that they stuck to the old school pre-rendered, at this point anyway, Resident Evil, like, kind of like, oh, you know, here's the, like, remember the horse racing one? I won't say anything more, where it's these weird little, like, you know, like pre-rendered horses, like doing this thing like that. Mm-hmm. That was kind of, you know, I like that. I like that stuff. It really fits in with the game. It almost sounds incongruent with all the like cell shading and, you know, like textureless stuff, but it really does work. And the map is like great. It tells you everything. Oh, when you come back here it has like a big old wind ring, like, you know, thing showing on. If you really can't figure it out, you just look at the map and say, oh, here it is. Or the next soul bullet is over here. Okay, I need to do this. Or the map just tells you everything, which is fine.
Yeah. The ultimate goal of most of these levels is you have an assassination target because you're a team of assassins. But before you can get to them, you do these puzzles. you pick up these items called soul bullets as rewards. Sometimes you only need one, sometimes you need like 6 of them. It just depends on the level. And that's going to be the thing. Like once you've collected all the soul bullets, then you can move on into that area with that dance track and then go fight the boss or something like that. So that is like your ultimate goal. That's what you're trying to get. Those are the MacGuffins, I suppose. But you're right. A lot of times, you know, I would get to the end and the guy would say like, you don't have enough soul bullets. And they'd be like, fuck, I missed one. Well, just check the map. It will tell you where it is. You might have to solve a puzzle to get it, but you'll at least have a direction where to go.
Yeah, it's very helpful. They don't want you to be too stuck on any one thing in this game for a reason. They want you to keep it moving. They want success out of you, you know? And it's kind of, especially in a game where it's kind of easy to die. Like you said, not everything will like one hit KO you, but sometimes it can. And then if it happens to Garcian too, you're kind of game over. Now, again, you're never too, like you said, you're never too super duper far from a save point. And even if you do get set back a little bit, you know exactly what to do already. So it's not really that big a deal. So they want you to keep this train rolling, which I appreciate.
Yeah. The only thing that I kind of like didn't like about that whole setup is you can only save in save rooms and you can only save in some save rooms. Some of the save rooms, there's a woman in the save room. Her name is Samantha. Yes. And it's almost like when she feels like it, you can save. Like sometimes you'll go in, she'll be in this, you know, servant's outfit and she'll save for you. Sometimes she'll just be like lounging in the chair and you can't even talk to her. She's like, nah, fuck off. Not right now.
Yeah.
And you know, I've said before, I said on the Resident Evil episode, like I have so much more free time to play video games than a lot of people my age, but sometimes I still like, I want to stop playing. I want to save the game and turn the fucking thing off.
Yeah.
And you just can't all the time in this. It's not like you're going to go hours without being able to save, but sometimes it would be like, okay, cool. I found Harmon's room. That means I can save. Ah, shit. Samantha's just chilling. She's not going to help me save right now. And that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, you know, that's the luxury of playing games nowadays, especially think about a JRPG back in the day where it's like, where it wasn't necessarily stingy with save points, but you knew if you were about to get into some shit, you may not be able to save for an hour. So you better have time to be able to do that. You can't just go to your Nintendo Switch and just press the power button and suspend it, you know? Like, so you better be prepared that you can do this right now, you know? And now we don't have to worry about stuff like that, but
yeah, it's like, it's something that annoyed me, but it was never something where it was like, well, I'm just going to turn this off because I have to go now. I didn't run into that situation. So I guess I was a little bit smart about it, where it was like, okay, I found a place where I can actually save. I got something to do coming up soon. I'll just call it for now. That's basically what it boiled down to. Mm-hmm. We'll talk a little bit in the spoiler section also, now that we brought up Samantha. I have some issues with the way they handle what I think and I'm even unclear if she's the only female character in the game, but they kind of treat her like shit and give her a really strange and like kind of offensive depiction. We'll talk about that in the spoiler section, but I do want to just shout that out. It is something that bothered me. And I didn't have a thing that came up in the spoilers or the story section earlier about it. We'll talk about Samantha later.
Okay.
Yeah. But the adventure game puzzles, the combat, I think it all works together pretty well. And aside from not being able to save every time I wanted to, and a couple of situations where either I don't know how to fight a Heaven Smile and they kill me, or there's like 6 of them and they kill me, I didn't have a lot of frustration with this, which is something that I really appreciate. And I think you said something to the effect of, they don't want you to be stuck. They want you to be able to keep moving.
Yeah.
And I think that that's true. And this was a really fun game to play.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste, this Killer7, huh? Obviously, it's not for everybody, which, you know, reflected in its sales figures at the time. This game did jack shit at retail. Obviously, sales figures from back then are murky, but like, it's very it's very understood that this sold probably under 80,000 copies, which like back then, that's not like the absolute worst thing depending on your budget. But for something like Killer7, which was obviously high budget, no, obviously it's not going to work.
Not great.
So, you know, an acquired taste. However, if us talking about this game, if this sounds like it's for you, it is. Trust me, it is. Yeah. This game will occupy a unique space in your mind like nothing else will. I promise. Like, it is unafraid to be exactly what it is. You know, and, you know, we've been talking about all this adventure game stuff. By 2005, adventure games were like this were pretty rare. You know, we were kind of getting out of the last throes of them, maybe in the very early 2000s with like a Myst sequel or two, right? We weren't really making games like that anymore. And then you add in the fact that it's very much for adults. And then only certain kinds of adults, you know, you like he said, you have to be the right kind of person to enjoy this. You're really limiting your audience here. And I kind of touched on this before, but think about how many publishers would have insisted that they just make this like a first person shooter or whatever, or just, no, we need to make it like this. We can't make this adventure game in 2005. Capcom allowed Suda51 to do this and Grasshopper Manufacture. And I'm so grateful that it exists. You may not like the vision of Killer7, but it's somebody's true vision. And I will never, no matter what, I will always appreciate that, whether I like the game or not.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. There's a lot of whinging out there about homogenization of video games and, you know, chasing trends and things like that. And then you get something like this that doesn't seem to be chasing any trend whatsoever. There's nothing about this game where I was like, oh, they're pandering to this audience. Nothing about this game felt like they were like, well, let's try and latch on to this, you know, the rising draft of these other types of things. Like in 2005, whatever trends were going on, like first person shooters, this is a first person shooter, but it's not like Halo or something like that. It's not like Call of Duty.
And you could never market it as one, because if you market it as, hey, here's the new FPS from Capcom, you'd be like, people get this home and be like, what? You know, what the hell is this? Mom, am I allowed to be playing this?
So when we are wrapping up here and we're talking, you know, closing thoughts and talking about, you know, recommending this to people, I think that you said it really, really well, where if this is something that you value, if you value playing unique games with unique visions that are the authentic version of like that vision that someone had. I don't get the feeling that this game was watered down from the original vision. And if it was, God help Suda51, because this game's weird as fuck. So if you value stuff like that, if you take a look at this aesthetic, or if you've enjoyed the stuff that we've talked about, I think Killer7's definitely worth a try. I am not going to sit up here and say that everyone's going to love it. It's a polarizing game, and I think that it earns that reputation. It earns those differing opinions, but I do think that like this is something to be valued, to play stuff like this. And this is why I like, there's part of me that thinks that like auteurism and auteur worship is harmful. But then the other side of it is you do get really authentic pieces of people's visions like this. And, you know, I've covered some Kojima stuff on the show, and there's more upcoming. And with projects like that, you get the good parts. You also get the warts, because no person is perfect. And the closer you get to one person's vision, the more of those warts will show too. Yep. But this is valuable. Stuff like this is valuable. So Killer7, if it sounds interesting, like Andre said, worth a try. And it's not expensive, but you can buy it on Steam.
Yeah.
A couple bucks. It's good.
Yeah. Even if you were, for some reason, found like an old like GameCube version, I don't recommend PS2, but like an old GameCube version, even just do that. I still think that version would hold up just fine.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So before we get into the spoiler section, we'll take care of a little bit of housekeeping. First things first, Andre, I've mentioned Find Time at the top of the show. I mentioned the Capcom 5 two-part series that you all did. But what other types of stuff do you do on Find Time? Going to introduce the show, and obviously tying in with this episode, we'll recommend those Capcom 5 episodes. But if there's anything else that you feel like is representative of Find Time, we can point people that way too.
There's some episodes I'm really proud of. I would say, I think November 2022, me and a friend Vin guested on the show, and we talked about Mega Man and bass. And how, when it came out, it was like revered as like this super Famicom import. Nowadays, its reputation is trash. Mm-hmm. And we went through like a lot of stuff, like whether it's like YouTube, like groupthink, or like, like how this game's reputation got tarnished from something that was people loved. Now people just say it sucks. And then we talk about the game itself and why we like it. But then also we take those criticisms and sort of defend the game against it. And I think it's one of the better things that we've put together on Fine Time. I was super proud of that episode because it came out kind of perfect. I almost don't say that about anything I do, but honestly, I wouldn't change a thing about it. I think
nice.
There's that. If I'm trying to think, what else did we you said the Capcom 5 stuff. An episode, and this, I'm partially saying this because this is our most downloaded episode on Fine Time, but around that same time, I would say like beginning into fall, late summer, 2022, we did an episode called Arcade Archives, A Beginner's Guide. Because it's so intimidating. You get a new Arcade Archives game comes out every week. You go on the eShop or PSN, you just see it there, and it's like, well, what is this? And there's hundreds of them. But we're those kind of arcade heads where we just, hey, if you don't know what you're doing out there, you want to get adventurous, you don't just want to play Pac-Man or something, here's some stuff that you can play. And people seem to appreciate that. So I'm glad, because people always ask me, what do you recommend to play this? And I'm terrible at recommendations because I'm like, I don't know your taste. I don't know you, right? So I can't give you a recommendation for you. I thought that episode was a nice general way to say, hey, here are some things that I think a lot of people can enjoy. So yeah, maybe those two.
Nice. Awesome. And then, I guess just give the general pitch for like, what is the general premise of Fine Time, aside from those, single episodes?
Fine Time is just a show where we talk about what we're interested in. Sometimes it's what we're genuinely playing, rather, I guess I could put it that way. Sometimes it'll be the latest and greatest. Like, I mean, we're going to record right now and talk about Mario Wonder. But sometimes it's like, hey, I've been playing this obscure TurboGrafx CD game that I want to talk about. Whatever we're genuinely playing, that's what we're going to say. We do industry news, hot takes on industry news, because we love that. We love, like, talking like, oh, what's the latest bullshit about like Intellivision Amico or whatever, like what's the like, obviously we've been like LOLing at a lot of the Microsoft Activision merger and stuff like that, so we like talking industry stuff, and then we play silly games, we do the thing, we often do a thing called Pokemon Real or Fake. I know jack shit about Pokemon. So Steve will make up Pokemon names, or sometimes they're real, and I'll have to guess real or fake while Kevin laughs at me. It's great. Nice. It's a perfect formula. All Kevin does is sit there and laugh. It's perfect.
He's got a good gig. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. But we just like to have fun. We like to have fun with video games. We like to have fun with the audience and be our authentic selves. So yeah, Fine Time.
I think that doing a podcast where you jump between topics, and then a lot of it is just kind of like, what are you playing or what do you want to talk about this week? I think that it's a hard thing to pull off and make yourself stand out from other podcasts that do news and what are we playing and things like that. But I think that you guys have a great mix of chemistry, knowledge about what you're talking about, which is important. You guys know a lot more about video games and video game history than I do. I'm just here talking about exactly, I played this game, we're talking about it this week. I don't really dig into news or history all that much because I don't know shit. So you guys do. I think it contributes a lot to a really fun and informative show and those two things are hard to pull off at the same time. So I want to give the recommendation for everyone out there to go check out that Mega Man and Bass episode. Go check out those Capcom 5 episodes. I first found the show because you all did a full spoiler review of Bayonetta 3, which was a game that I had just finished. And I was like, this game sucks. Why is no one talking about how it sucks? And you guys talked about how it sucks. And I was like, they get it. They get it. Thank you. And I've been listening since then. That was over a year ago now. So
yes. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. And everyone can check down in the show notes for a link to Find Time. And go check out the show. It's quality stuff.
Thank you very much.
For Tales from the Backlog, it's the same call to actions. Nope, I did it right the first time. Calls to action, as always. We have an active and welcoming Discord server that we would love to have you come join. There's an invite link down in the show notes. Come join the Discord and come chat. If you have thoughts about Killer7, that is a good thing to jump in and do. You can support the show by leaving a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. If it is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Podcast Addict, they allow reviews, and that's really helpful. So if somebody, searches Killer7, they'll be able to find this episode. And if you want to support monetarily, you can do so at patreon.com/realdavejackson. All patrons get to vote in polls for what games I do on the show. And Killer7 was in one of those polls. It lost, but then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm playing it anyway. So that's why we're here today. But you can vote in the polls. The game that won that poll was Rain World, and that will be coming up soon. So monthly polls, you also get bonus episodes, and you'll get to support people named Dave, or at least one. So we can all agree that's a good thing.
It's important. It's important, Dave.
Very important work. Yeah. So Andre and I are going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to do full spoilers for Killer7. Okay, Andre and I are back, and we are going to do full spoilers for Killer7. Now, I said in the non-spoiler part that I didn't fully, understand the story, so we are not going to explain the story of Killer7. You're going to have to go elsewhere for that if that's what you want. But we are going to kind of give our thoughts on the three main storylines. The storyline with the past of the Smith Syndicate. We'll talk about the political plot, and then there's a third storyline that develops, which is Garcian's identity. And Garcian is kind of like the main Smith persona. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the ending that we got, and then we'll just kind of rapid fire down some other memorable stuff from the game.
Sounds good.
So one of the key things that you find out fairly early on in the game, and then it gets developed until the last level is kind of all about this, is that all of the Smith personas, Kevin, Garcian, all of them, as well as Yun and Travis, are all dead. And they were all either, I was never clear on if they were all actually killed by Harmon Smith, or if they were their involvement with him in some way, like Garcian. Well, you do see Garcian die. Never mind. If they're all dead, or if their all involvement causes them to then be looped into this involvement, I was never clear on how Harmon, he has a superpower basically, that he can choose a person he kills or a dead person in general and have that become one of these projections. And you learn how this happened.
Yeah, and I just on the surface of just from a gameplay perspective, I love the part where you go into the hotel and you see how you kill each and every individual character. I loved all that shit. Yeah, that was great. I loved actually seeing it, Yeah.
That hotel level is really cool because you go in and you solve puzzles in the rooms where Kaede and Dan and all of them died. But that's not what you see the first time. You see that later. It recontextualizes the spaces that you've been in as, oh, that's why that puddle of blood was there, is because Coyote was sitting there when you shot him and killed him. Stuff and like that.
That's why that electrocuted bath was, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool. When you go to this level, you hear this kind of, it's almost presented as an urban legend. This is the place where the Killer7 committed these murders, these 6 murders, and the 6 murders turn out to be all the people in the Killer7 that aren't Garcian. Basically, Garcian's the one going and doing these hits. And then I suppose that Harmon decided, like, yes, these are the people that I want to use my power and, like, you know, summon to do this work for me.
I still, to this day, it doesn't matter how many times I play this game, I still will not totally get what's happening there.
Yeah.
So Harmon hired. See, I can't even think of a hypothesis. I have no idea. I really don't. And that's fine. It's for me, but
see, my hypothesis would be that Harmon hired Garcian to do this, but then at the end of the hotel level, Garcian kills a younger version of himself. So then we get into this territory where I'm like, okay, this is like dreamy weemy. It doesn't make any sense. I'm just rolling with everything I see now.
Yeah, with your third eye.
Yeah.
Which he does. Okay, that was one thing I also, you know how when you get, I hope I'm not skipping too ahead, but when you get into the thing where you like, where you open the safe in the school and his third eye kind of bleeds, it bleeds across the top of his forehead there. Mm-hmm. But you don't really know that that's a thing yet. You only find that out later. So it's like kind of weird. Yeah.
I was kind of on the trail of like, whatever's in that safe is related to Garcian. So I wondered, like, is that his dead body in there? And that's what causes this? Like, is there some weird paradox being formed here or something like that? But this is not a game where I was like determined or confident that I would be able to make sense of this stuff. So a lot of it was like, yeah, I think that maybe that's what's going on. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm just going to have fun theories about what's happening.
Maybe, I typically almost never watch YouTube videos about this kind of stuff because I just don't care. I just accept whatever the game has given me or whatever I think. This is one case where I might actually watch someone's Killer7 because the game is so obscure that it's like the people who are doing this really give a shit. Like somebody cares, right? So I guess I would like to hear someone's theory. Maybe I should seek that out.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I was thinking about doing that in preparation for this episode, but then I was like, I don't want to come in the spoiler section and act like I know what's happening as if it were my own ideas.
Exactly.
And if I watched a YouTube video, I would literally just be taking notes on what they say and then presenting that as my own idea. And I don't want to do that. So, you go through that hotel mission. It's the last level, but you find the truth about how basically everyone you've been talking to or controlling has been killed by Harmon Smith in some way. And then he just kind of, there's some superpower. You apparently find out that Harmon Smith is immortal.
Yeah.
As is his rival there's that scene early in the game where you're having like this sniper off and you line up a shot and shoot him and he catches the bullet, but it like pulls him across the city.
I love it. That's one of my favorite fucking things ever. I love it. It was so ridiculous. And it's cool looking. And it also is like a hell of a way to reveal the game is in Seattle. Because he just shoots him right to the Space Needle. So it's like, okay, I guess that's a thing. But then like that happens early in the game. And of course, at the end of the game, that happens again to reveal, I guess it looks like the future, but it's also still the Space Needle. So I guess it's just kind of, it's supposed to just clue it in. Hey, this cycle happens forever. Him and Green Dracula over there.
Yeah. I wasn't clued in that this is the far future. So like this is something I pulled off the Wikipedia entry. Like the fact that it's, like there's a bunch of like, I couldn't tell if it was Chinese or if it was kanji on the signs in that last, the far future scene. Mm-hmm. I was just like, oh, this is, well, Shanghai has towers like that. So I don't know, maybe they're in Shanghai this time, but apparently it's the far future. Again, this is like, I don't know where I am. I don't know when I am. I'm just taking it in at this point. But I guess we do have like this eternal struggle between Harmon and his rival, who I didn't write his name down.
It doesn't matter. I don't even remember.
Let me try to get this straight. So after you beat the last level, you get one more thing in Garcian's trailer, and we'll talk about Garcian's trailer more.
Yeah.
And Harmon looks like he's dead in there, and there's that door in Garcian's trailer in the back, the one with like the safe lock on it, the one that has all like the screaming and shit coming from it the entire game. That's one hell of a tease for like, because every time you're in the trailer, you hear this like wild screaming happening from behind the door. And I'm just like, every time I was in there, I was like, well, I'll go see if I can open it. You never can until 2 times at the end of the game. I don't really know what's going on. The first time you can go in, there's like Harmon and his rival are like playing chess or some shit.
Yes.
And then the second time you go in, you go all the way down to the bottom, and it's supposed to be like the mother of the Heaven Smiles, and it's Iwazaru. But you kill him, and then it turns out that was Harmon's rival or some shit. So, like, I'm still very confused about what the hell's happening in that
I would
room.
imagine that the torturous screaming was obviously Iwazaru, I guess.
Perhaps.
I mean,
with the BDSM thing.
Right. And I'm not, I haven't big brained that before. That is literally just something I thought of just now because of the way you talked about it. That's the only, I've never had a theory about that until now. Cause why would the screaming sound so tortured? And you know what I mean? Cause it's not just someone yelling in fright. They're being hurt. You can tell,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, it is very unsettling sound. God, I wonder, I would love to do an interview with the guy who recorded those screams. I would love to know.
What if you searched and it was like some famous, voice actors, like the guy who did the voicing for Majima in Yakuza is the one who did the screams in Killer7 or some shit.
Yeah, that's how we got to start.
Yeah.
You never know sometimes. But yeah, that's but okay, I don't remember if this is the same scene or if in the same area rather, but the part where they're sitting there playing chess and they just turn towards Garcian and he just blows them away. He just kills both of them. Yeah. Is that in the same place? I don't even remember.
It's behind the same door. You open that door, you go in and they're playing chess, but I could not even begin to try to think of a reason why that happens. I have no idea.
It's just, it's something. All right.
So this made me think, because Iwazaru, you're told that in there is the leader of the Heaven Smile, and it's Iwazaru, who is actually the rival in disguise. So Iwazaru's been the one that's been helping you, kind of pushing you in the right direction, helping you assassinate these targets. So I wondered if there was like in this eternal game between Harmon and his rival, is this like, some trick that his rival was playing to try and get a leg up this round or something like that?
Yeah, it almost makes it unclear. It almost had the feeling that Harmon always wins the chess match or some weird shit. It felt like it was like the literally like the devil and angel on your shoulder, with Harmon being the angel and he just has to like eternally fight against this thing.
Yeah.
I guess this is my only real interpretation of the situation.
Yeah, it's a story where like, I'm glad we at least came to one theory possibility together with what's happening behind that door.
I told you, I never had a single inkling until just now. I'm glad we could think of that.
I'm glad we could think of it, because there's a lot of these things where we'll just be like, is this what's going on? And the other one's just like, yeah, I don't know. And we're like, yeah, that's weird, isn't it? Well, moving on. After this is over, you get one more mission with Garcian when he has the golden gun, and you go and kill some more Heaven Smiles and stuff. And there's, I think it's the guy. I think it's the rival guy in the green. You get a choice to kill him or not, basically. And it's like, it's wrapping up this political storyline about like this instability between Japan and the US, which I could not follow. Because
the second half of the game completely forgets about this.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
You're talking about like this secret society, this school that raises all the US presidents and stuff like that. We get into that plot. But with this really abrupt ending where like, okay, so we did the thing with Iwazaru. Oh no, the thing with Iwazaru was after this. You go in, you have a choice to like kill this guy or spare him. I killed him because I didn't know who he was, and I was like, I'm killing him. And then you get like this really quick cut to a cutscene where Japan explodes.
Yeah. in 2014, Japan, was exploded by so-and-so missiles not intercepted by the United States or whatever. Yeah, that's basically the whole thing. The U.S. didn't send the missiles. They're deciding whether to intercept them or not to save Japan or let Japan blow up. The U.S. didn't send the missiles. But we still don't know where the missiles came from, which whatever, I guess. But
and so, like, it's a result of this storyline that played out, and then apparently this person that I chose to kill, because there is another ending where Japan doesn't get destroyed if you let that guy live. So apparently my choice to kill him, like, fucked up relations between the US and Japan, where the US was like, you know what, you're on your own.
Yeah, that was weird. So, okay, I've only ever seen the one where Japan blows up. I never really thought about the fact that there was a possibility where it didn't. So I guess I've only ever killed this guy. I just kind of figured it all went to the same place. I guess not. So I guess I should see it from the other side sometime, or reload to save and see. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
About that school and that whole resolution to, like, all the U.S. presidents are decided here at this school and yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was like two things. It's a very interesting concept, and again, we talked about it being 2005. Boy, I don't know. This just fits the tenor of the time so much, I guess, in a way that I did not realize, maybe just because I'm older now and I can look back on it and I don't know, older, wiser, etc. Definitely just the climate of W administration, for lack of a better term. I just, it's so obvious now in a way that I can't believe I didn't pick up on it before, I guess.
Yeah. There is always that thing where it's like the U.S. doesn't have royal family like they do in the U.K., but the U.S. has royal families. And so a lot of, politicians, at least like the really important ones, seem to be the same people that keep coming up again. So the fact that they kind of portrayed this in this game as, well, we have this school for the ultra elite and everyone who graduates from here eventually becomes the president. I thought it was interesting in that school when you're in the gym, they have portraits of the past principals, and it looked like there's a picture of Harmon Smith up there as one of the past principals of that school. So that was interesting. Again, not sure what to make of that.
So maybe he fostered Garcian as a kid to be whatever he needed to be in this current life, in this current immortal life, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose if you do have a story with like dueling immortals, then they would find their way to like weave themselves into the goings on of, the big powers of the time or something like that.
Yeah, it's wild just to think about it that way. It's just crazy. There was another scene, though, in this school that I loved, and it's the Russian roulette scene I kind of touched on earlier, but it was pretty unforgettable. That school headmaster was just like, again, it's Russian roulette. So, he's going first against Garcian, and he's so nervous. He's freaking out. He's like, oh my God. And he clicks, and it's like almost like this sort of silent, like, oh my God, I'm still alive. Garcian, when he slides the thing to Garcian just picks it up, takes it, click, puts it right back on the table, slides it over in like 3 seconds flat. Yeah. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah,
he doesn't care at all. Like, and this other guy's like, with every pull of the trigger, he's just freaking out. Like you or I would, basically, if we were playing Russian roulette, right? Because obviously it'd be scary as hell. The stoicness of Garcian, I guess, was like perfect, matched with this like lunatic. I loved everything about that scene. It didn't make any fucking sense, but I loved it.
It was really cool. And it also had like, remember that scene in Taken where he was like, you forgot the weight of a loaded gun when he tries to shoot him?
Yeah, yeah.
It had that kind of thing where like the guy thinks that he won and he's getting real cocky about it. And Garcian takes the gun, click again, no shot, when it was supposed to be the last round. And Garcian's like, you forgot one thing. This gun holds 7 bullets, and slides it over. And then the guy kills himself, basically.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's great. 7 bullets, Killer7, got to do it.
We didn't really camp out we kind of spread out discussion of voice acting through several things, but I don't think we actually got to the point where we were just like, hey, the voice acting for Garcian, because he talks a lot, and other characters that talk a lot, is really good. Like, so you have this scene where Garcian and this person are playing Russian roulette, and Garcian is cool, confident, totally in control the entire time. And like the voice acting and stuff is excellent for portraying this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all the characters, it's very memorable stuff. Dan Smith has that like very like I'm the hero voice, you know, and it's like it's perfect for him because it works. Coyote, all of them have, well, Kevin doesn't speak, but like Coyote is from South America somewhere, I forget. But like, you know, he has that like perfect accent. Masta Smith is obviously also Hispanic. He sounds like it. Like everyone was like perfectly like, I don't know. Everyone was played really well, I think, when they don't sound like ghosts.
Yeah. And a lot of like the side characters, because like you said, only the living people get like, you know, quote, real voice acting. So all of those side characters, like what's the guy's name? Umeda. The guy with the afro that scares Iwasaru.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. So his voice acting is good. You know, all the villains that you come across, those the Power Rangers ripoffs, they're all great. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those Power Rangers, the handsome men, as they say. I
always forget what they're actually called. I just call them fake ass Power Rangers. Yes, the handsome men.
The handsome men.
Full ass like anime sequences too, introducing them and shit. They didn't hold back. Like they really sold it.
Yeah. There's another interesting kind of like magical thing in this chapter, because your target is the writer of this comic, the handsome men, and the superpower is that whatever he draws in the comic will then happen in real life with the handsome men. So if he draws the handsome men coming and killing the Killer7, then you have, you know, a situation on your hands. Well, he dies like almost immediately because he draws the handsome men. They get in a fight with the Killer7. One of them does a handsome beam that kills the writer.
Yep.
And then we kind of touched on this, but the boss, like if this were in a different game, you would have just a first-person shooter boss fight against the handsome men. But instead, they choose to portray it in, like you had mentioned a couple times, like this graphic novel style where you don't really fight them. You have these duels. The handsome men go up against a corresponding member of the Killer7, and you have no agency in who wins and who loses. It's all predetermined. But you take part, you have to like pull the trigger and stuff like that. But it's really fun. Like, even though I'm not doing the fighting, I was like, look at they're fighting the fucking Power Rangers. This is hilarious right now.
It's great. It's really great stuff, you know, and it has that heroic music too. It does like the whole bit. There's something I want to mention real quick, and I don't know how, since we're talking about the Power Rangers, and I don't know how much I can really say about this. I feel a little bit out of my league, but like, I just felt like it was interesting that like, I touched on it earlier, that like a lot of the stuff Suda51 is doing in this game is sort of like, I don't know if making fun of Japanese culture is the correct term, but you know what I mean? Like sort of just taking the piss out of it, just sort of taking these very extreme, you know, like I mentioned the anime girl with the machine gun earlier, and now the fake ass Power Rangers and stuff. It's almost like he's trying to make some sort of societal joke that we're not really picking up on. I wonder if there's something deeper there that a Japanese person playing this game would kind of receive, because like, look, if these things were an American game, this would be like almost borderline racist, like almost, right? But like from a Japanese game, obviously it hits different. Like I said, I just feel like there's something deeply cultural there that I don't think we can probably get, but maybe someone who is better at this stuff can maybe say something on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's definitely safe to say that of the Japanese games that are set in America and referencing American things, this, of the ones I've played, you know, incomplete set, but this feels like still the most Japanese of those games. This is more, this feels, well, I was going to say this feels more Japanese than Metal Gear Solid. That's not entirely true, but like the things on the screen are, you still have anime style cutscenes. You have that anime girl, like you said, you have the Power Rangers, and I forget like the type of show that the Power Rangers are based on. But yeah, this definitely still feels like it hasn't crossed the line so far into like Americana that it's no longer, that there are no longer things hidden from people who aren't Japanese. That's where I'm getting at. I think you're onto something for sure.
I think you're totally correct. Yeah, that's the best way you can put it. Unless, like I said, I wish I knew more culturally. You know, learning Japanese language, you do learn a lot about Japanese culture, but not, you know what I mean? Just because it's so intrinsically tied as language is, right? But I obviously don't know enough to really speak on this fully. I just thought it was just definitely interesting, and I wanted to, you know, say that I saw that, even though I don't totally get it, I guess.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like, language and culture are intertwined. I speak Korean fluently, but there's so much that I'll never know about Korean culture because I'm not Korean. It's just, you'll never get totally there. So there's always going to be something you'll miss.
Yeah.
But that is probably true here. And that kind of, you know, pointing that out makes me respect how accurate some of the portrayals of American stuff is too. Like, it seems like the best of both worlds if you're able to tap into both sides.
Yeah, and this game was, let's not forget, it was co-written by Shinji Mikami, who obviously draws upon some of the same stuff from America as Suda51 does. So the two of them putting a thing together, of course it would be like this, right? What else would they make besides Killer7? So, you know, it of course. Yeah,
weird game. I was trying to, like, you know more about Suda51's history than me. This was not like, was this early Suda51? You know, like he worked for other companies before he started to be able to make his weird ass games the way he wants to, right?
Yeah, but like he mostly, since the late 90s, did like very small independent-ish projects. They got published on like, you know, PS1 or like whatever. But like this was his big breakout, big budget with a big publisher thing. And probably the first game of his to release in America. I don't know that for sure. But like this was his big breakout thing, I think, like globally, not just in America, but just in general.
That's what I was getting at. This doesn't feel like someone's first project. This feels like someone's first project on this kind of scale. This feels like a heat check for someone who's been doing well on a large scale. And then they're like, you know what? You can make whatever the hell you want because you have this clout. And apparently that wasn't the case. They were just like, you know, Capcom was just like, hey, just make whatever weirdo game you want. We'll put it on there.
Yeah. And I'm so glad they did. And, but yeah, it's just, you know, this is still Capcom's IP. Like, Grasshopper Manufacturer doesn't have any control over this. Because, like, Suda51 says he is like to do a sequel, but it's not up to him. It's up to Capcom. So, yeah, I wish sometime they could get control of this again, so maybe he could do that. But
yeah. So any other, I think we've covered like the story as best as we can, but let's just go through some other kind of memorable stuff that happened.
Okay. It took me a long time, like you were saying with like Samantha, for like, you know, sometimes it was only when she's wearing the maid outfit is when you could save. When she's just sitting around wearing her casual clothes, it's like, okay, whatever, fuck off. I didn't realize that for a long time. I just kind of figured, okay, she's just not paying attention to me. I didn't realize it was the maid outfit was the save outfit, you know? I don't know why it took me so long.
This is real weird. Like her character, you know, this is a game full of weird characters, but her character was just one I had a real hard time wrapping my head around. Like, she has some kind of like dominatrix relationship with Harmon Smith. Like, she's being paid to be there. I think that's clear, right?
Yeah.
She's in there. Sometimes you walk in and they're like having sex. Sometimes she's beating the shit out of him. And then at some point you walk in and she's dead and she's like peed herself and her panties are showing. There's like something bad happened. There was a nagging thing in my head where I was like, and I think there's one other female character who is like the disembodied head you talk with.
Yeah, the girl, yeah.
Yeah. And it just made me think like, okay, there's one prominent female character. It could have been like a, empowerment thing, but then at the end it was very much not an empowerment thing. And I was like, Jesus, what the fuck happened with that? Yeah. And then there's the other female character who is just a dead, disembodied head that you find in like a cupboard in every level. Mm-hmm. And it was like, another thing. It's like, I don't want to attribute this to all of the Japanese auteurs, but of the ones we've been talking about in this episode, it's a thing. It is a thing.
It is a thing. It really is. Even Kenji Eno, like I mentioned earlier, the auteur, his character that he uses in all his games is a woman. But also, man, the stuff that happens to him sometimes in those games is wild. There was a mini censorship controversy I remember about D2 back in the day, where Sega of America got squeamish about a couple of shots in the game. So they kind of it was the same scene, but they just did a couple of different angles. And this was so controversial because, gamers, right? And I remember that back in the day, and I was thinking like, I get it. Like, I don't think it was a big deal. I think they kind of made more of it out of than it should have been, but whatever. Point being of me saying that, yeah, the Samantha stuff, it's funny until you brought it up to me this way. And just now, and even before we did the podcast, I was like, yeah, I guess so. But I don't know if that's a failing on me to think that, like, man, this is kind of I don't want to say it's a problem in this game necessarily, but when you put all the evidence together, especially with the, people have criticisms of Kojima stuff and whatever in the same way, right? Yeah. And I don't think this is a pattern in Suda51's games. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah. And this is, the only one I've played. It was just something I noticed where I was like, okay, so we have one prominent female character. Her purpose is to be this, her purpose is to be like this dominatrix figure. And then she dies in a way where I was like, all right, is that the way that she had to die in this story? Like, you couldn't have just found her laying on the floor dead in a pool of blood like everyone else in the game. It's just something that like, maybe I'm keyed into a little bit because I'm a bit more sensitive because I have been playing Kojima games, and that's an issue in Kojima games. So just something that I thought to mention. And it was noteworthy because between all the levels, you always have these scenes between Samantha and Harmon, and they're always so fucking weird. Like, I have no idea what's going on there.
She's slapping the shit out of him. Come on, old man, eat, or whatever. Just trying to force like cream of wheat in his mouth or whatever it is, right? Yeah. Like, it is just like so wild. But that made me think, like, is Harmon in this particular immortal life starting to die, so he needs to stay alive long enough for, like, who the fuck knows? I mean, I don't even know, right? But
that was part of why it didn't make sense to me, because sometimes Samantha is there for this, like, very obviously, like, she's there as a sex worker and nothing wrong with that, but that's not her whole role. Sometimes she's there trying to get him to eat. Sometimes she's there just hanging out, and she's like, I was just waiting for you to get here. So I don't know, you watch the old man. Now I can go to school and shit. Like, I have no idea what's happening with her character. And yeah, just the ending was like, okay, I was already on the, like, okay, what's going on here? And now the ending of her storyline was like, all right, we didn't have to do it like that.
It could have been more interesting, I guess, than her just being dead. It was literal dead end. I guess it could have been more than that, but it was just like, oh, I guess she's dead now. Or moving right along. You
raise an interesting question, because, like, if Harmon is immortal and he and this other person are on this, like, this eternal battle against each other, then yeah, why is he this, like, completely feeble old man in Garcian's in Garcian's trailer? Like, he never talks in those scenes. Maybe, you know what it could be? Maybe doing, like, the projection, because you're controlling Garcian during those scenes. Maybe that is just too much. Like, he can't exist in both states.
Yeah.
At the same time, maybe.
And also, like, because to speak to him, you have to go to the TV and turn to him, and then Samantha becomes the maid Samantha, the master will see you now, or the master is awake.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you're talking to him in this, and Garcia kneels because he feels fealty towards him, and then, like, Harmon does speak to him in that instance, but that has to be some sort of mind thing. It's not, real, right? I don't know, man. It was so weird.
Yeah.
It was so weird, Killer7.
The whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing. Let's see. I think we covered a lot of the stuff I wanted to touch on in the spoiler section here as far as memorable stuff. The Olmeda boss fight, I guess, is one thing I want to talk about. How he turns into this monster because of this, because the Heaven Smile like virus turns him into this monster.
Yeah.
But before you do that, you have this scene where, like, because he has like this almost like a cult basically in this town, right? And you have this scene where he like chooses this lucky winner and he gives them like this sports car and he makes them like drive as fast as they can, like to a faster than possible speed in a sports car, so fast that like they die from driving too fast. And that's their like reward for being picked by the leader. That was another one of those scenes where I was like, that is really fucking weird. I don't think it fits into the greater story, but like that, who had this idea? What's going on here?
Yeah, and they did that in like an anime sequence too. That wasn't real time. They really wanted you to see, and like, yeah, it was so weird. It's just like, oh man, it was wild. Yeah, I love that scene. Might be my favorite scene of the game. I just thought that was crazy looking. And then you fight Olmeda by like, oh, his brain's out of his head. I just shoot it once. Okay, that's over. It's just like, okay. I like how they don't really try to make you work for most boss battles that way, but that was fun. I think the only other thing I was thinking about was that, like, when Garcian's informant gets killed on the bridge, they're talking to the car and someone snipes him.
Mm-hmm.
And it just turns into like, I love that scene. It was almost like Heat, like the movie Heat. It was it was great. Garcia has to get out of the car and they're still shooting at him. And I was just like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't expect that to happen. But like, yeah, I thought that was like a cool little nugget.
Yeah. Because Garcian had been having those informant meetings throughout the game. And again, something that like I was watching those scenes. Obviously, I think it's portraying Garcian as like the public facing person. He's the one who goes out, he gets the intel, he helps out with all of that stuff because for whatever reason, Harmon can't or doesn't want to go out and do that stuff. So he sends Garcian and then eventually something bad happens there. Like, I guess showing that like, because Garcian reacts like he's in danger during that scene. So I guess it was just showing, maybe foreshadowing that the Killer7 are not immortal. Like when they're out doing this stuff, like they still feel danger, which then comes back when you do that boss fight in the gym, which is unwinnable. Where all of the Killer7, like one by one, they can't hurt this like new version of the Heaven Smile and they all die until Garcian gets the golden gun, which is cool.
Right. And so they all like, you know what? Yeah, I guess that's the last time you use any of them because they all sort of quote unquote die right there. Because the rest of the game you play as Garcian, especially up to the roof, and then you open the briefcase that he's been carrying the whole time, has all the weapons in it of the Killer7.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, is that what you expected to be in the briefcase, by the way? I didn't really think about it as the game went on.
Like a Pulp Fiction situation with the briefcase. I guess I didn't really think about it either. But then when he opened it up, I guess because he always carries it. And then when you pick up one of the meat sacks with the dead bodies or with the dead Smiths, he opens the briefcase. So I was like, oh, that's his body revival kit or some shit. But yeah, I guess it has all the guns for the other Smiths.
Yeah.
So he's the public face of the Smith Syndicate, and he's also the armory or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it was strange. Yeah, I didn't really think about what was in there beforehand. I was like, oh, it's just the weapons. Okay, cool. I guess so. But yeah, I think I'm out of spoiler shit. I think we covered our bases. Yeah. Yeah.
The last thing, and just real quick for anyone who's beaten the game, you after you beat the game, you unlock a high difficulty mode, and it's called Killer 8 mode, which I thought was funny. And it's called Killer 8 because you get to play as a new character.
It's really cool, and it's very striking because it's also yellow compared to the red of the rest of the game. It's Killer 8. It looks funny, yeah.
Yeah. So that is Killer7. So Dre, thanks for coming on and talking about it with me, man.
No problem. I love this game, and I'm glad you enjoyed it enough where we could really just get into the weird, because I figured you would, and I'm glad I was right.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely glad that I pushed it onto the show, made myself play it. I'm not only looking for this kind of game, but I do like to play a unique, weird game. Even if I can't make sense of the story, I will still remember the experience of playing Killer7. So again, this was a good time. I appreciate you coming on. Everyone who has made it to the end, I appreciate you all listening. You can, again, check down in the show notes for Find Time, which I recommend you check out. Especially, I'll probably just put links to those Capcom 5 episodes as well. So if you want to go straight from Killer7 to the series on the Capcom 5, that makes a lot of sense. So go down and check down there. Appreciate everyone who listens. As always, thank you to the patrons, and tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.